Hi, I'm Colton. Tonight I'll be doing the refutation of Ridley Beyond's claim. Her topic is on the death penalty. Her main claim that I'll be refuting tonight is that the death penalty is an ineffective process to criminal punishment in the United States. Her secondary claims that I'll be refuting are the death penalty is too costly, the death penalty doesn't reduce murder rates, and the execution process is inconsistent. While lots of these claims are vague, I will try to explain them as best I can. So back to her first claim for responses, the death penalty is too costly. The statistics she gets on the death penalty prices are actually from the same website that Kevin was mentioning earlier, which is the deathpenaltyinfocenter.org. And they do claim to be an unbiased website, but they actually run ad campaigns for senators that want to abolish the death penalty entirely. And I was reading it and I couldn't find anything that wasn't pro-death penalty, and it seems incredibly biased to me. And so the prices that she listed was that the average death sentence trial costs about $395,000, where a trial for a crime that's equal, but where they don't seek a death penalty result, is about $98,000. And while she's right in this, and it's about four times as expensive in Kansas, this being in Kansas, which is the most expensive state for a death penalty trial. But also, she makes it seem as if this is the end of the financial burden that is placed on the government. Based on a study done by the New York Times in an article, each prisoner that stays inside of a maximum detention facility costs them about $167,000 per year, which would make up for the price of the expensive murder trial in about 2.5 years. And if the prisoner was serving a 25 to life term, granted they lived only the 25 years, it would cost the taxpayers ultimately roughly $4.2 million for them to stay there, which would trump the minor charge caused by this expensive trial just tremendously. The death penalty, so in conclusion of that claim, the death penalty ultimately does not cost nearly as much as keeping a prisoner alive for the entirety of their life. Responding to her second claim, the death penalty doesn't reduce murder rates. She provides very little support for this. She brings up two things. One being the innocent people are sometimes killed in this, and yes, that's true. Since 1608, she said that her claim was that 4.1% of people who were sentenced to death were actually innocent. And that's actually not true even in her own bibliography when you read it. The statistic was from an article called Rate of False Conviction of Criminal Defendants Who Are Sentenced to Death. And what it's actually saying is that these people were, had they been sentenced to life in prison instead of killed, they would have been exonerated to a lower crime and not have faced death charges. They were not innocent, they just would have been exonerated down to a lower level crime. So this statistic doesn't show very much. It's actually an estimation, and it's not really linked to whether or not it's going to reduce murder rates, whether or not innocent people are killed, so I'm not entirely sure why she brought that up. It lacks support. Also, she was right when that states that have the death penalty do not have a lower murder rate than other states. But this is mostly due to the long waiting period in between the conviction and the actual carrying out of the execution, which for the entire nation is roughly 9 years. Going on to her third claim, responding to that, the execution process is very inconsistent, which in itself is an unclear claim of what she's trying to say, and she provides very little support again. She brings up the drug that they use to kill people, which it's called sodium thiopental. And she was saying that the drugs are not adequately screened, they didn't have a very good quality testing. And this is important. There seems to not be I couldn't find anything on a shortage of it, but she said. But also, whether or not it's screened and it's being bought in California and Nebraska, like she said, in bulk, isn't really important whether or not it's consistent, because the people are still being executed. Just because one drug is lacking, they're still finding ways to execute these people every year. She also brought up the fact that the process takes too long, but there's really no way to get rid of the process's length unless you were to remove the rights that the convicts have and taken away their appellate process so that they couldn't be able to appeal their own death sentence, which would be, this is the reason why they're on death row for so long, because some of these people have 9, 10, 12-year trials. So, in conclusion, I went over why the death penalty is too costly. She should have investigated that more, I believe. She said the death penalty doesn't reduce murder rates, it just lacks support and was very vague. And the execution process is inconsistent. she just didn't have very much support for that either. Thank you.
Right. The structural stuff is all good. On the first point, the general criticism of the Death Penalty Information Center is okay. I don't know that it gets you much. I think the argument about the cost element is a lot clearer, and you explained that pretty effectively with the estimate about how much it costs to keep somebody in the maximum security situation, and you've got some statistical analysis that you do there on the comparison. The other thing later on, when you mention the reason for the delays and the lag in executions, that's probably part of the cost issue also, and I think that you could mention that as well. So in essence, the argument might be that the advocate's not justifying a criticism of death as a penalty, but rather the system by which the death penalty is administered, and the argument is really about the appellate process and the costs that are incurred there, not about the penalty itself. I think there's a good argument to be made on that particular point. On the murder rate issue, the challenge on the advocate's own evidence, I thought that was interesting, although you do want to give the citation on that and make sure that it's being quoted accurately. It sounds like you're paraphrasing what's happening there. The more relevant argument is its relevance. How does it indicate the lack of effectiveness of the death penalty? It doesn't. It seems like it's connected to some other issue, not really the issue of whether or not the death penalty is an effective way of preventing crime. You talk about the state-by-state comparison, which does deal with this issue, and your answer to that was a little bit unclear. Basically, you're going to attribute it to the time lag issue, and that may be the case, but I'm not exactly sure that undermines the inference that the advocate's drawing on this point. So I think that you should probably find some better evidence to show that the death penalty has a deterrent effect on that. And then on the drug use argument, I understand why you raise the issue and point out that this, it's another relevance claim. I think that that's the right response to make there. Pretty good summary of your position also at the end of the speech. Thank you.